everyone to Talos IR On Air. My name is Gergana Karajova-Dango and I will be your host for today. This is a live broadcast on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. We are also recording the session in case you want to go back and check any specific part. In the next 30 minutes, we are going to look at the top trends which were observed by the Talos IR team in the months of April, May, and June 2023. We'll talk about one of the hottest cybersecurity services out there, the Purple Team exercise. And we'll have a special topic to discuss, which usually comes up around the second Tuesday of every month, but it actually should be on our agendas much more often. I'm really happy to welcome you to this broadcast. And today I've been joined by 3 colleagues to whom I would like to give a chance to introduce themselves and tell us what do they do at Talos. Starting with Nicole.
So my name is Nicole Hoffman, and I'm a security investigator on the Talos Threat Intelligence and Interdiction team. My team wears a lot of hats, but I'm hunting for trends in the threat landscape. I'm also providing threat intelligence support for incident response engagements.
Thank you, Nicole. Also today with us is Pavel.
Hello, I'm Pavel Bosek. I'm Incident Commander in Talos Incident Response. I primarily focus on the support and collaboration between our team incident responders and the customer teams who are actively working on the emergencies on their side. Thank you.
Thank you, Pavel. And also today with us is one of the leaders of the Talos team. Hi, Sebastian.
Hi, Gergana. Hello, everybody. My name is Sebastian Perez. I'm one of the leaders of Talos Incident Response. My main task is basically lead the team of incident commanders, incident response consultants, and Purple Team consultants, making sure that they have everything they need to help our customers when needed. I also contribute to the strategy of the team and the services we deliver to our customers.
Thank you. You're in good hands, so you have many reasons to stay with us in the next 30 minutes. Please feel free to post any questions that you have in the QA space of the platform that you're using. We'll get to them at the end of today's episode. So before we jump into the discussion, let's talk about the Talos IR Quarterly Trends Report. What is it? What data do we use to produce it? And who can benefit from it? I'm super happy to have Nicole on this episode because she's one of the persons involved actually in creating the report, and she's definitely able to tell us more about its background.
Sure. So the report allows us to document and review all of the incident response engagements across the quarter. With that information, we're able to identify trends, not only within the current quarter, but also across multiple quarters. And we're also able to make predictions and look back at previous predictions. And there's a couple things that we look at when we create this report. Number 1 is the top identified threat for the quarter. Number 2 is the initial access vectors, or the top one that was used to enable the attacks, the post-compromise activity, and the top security weaknesses from the defender's point of view, and as well as the top business vertical that was targeted during the quarter.
So you already gave us a lot of keywords which would get us interested in order to check out the full report, which is also available on the Talos Intelligence blog. In your opinion, is this a report for the frontline people who are every day on the keyboard actually defending organizations, or it is a report rather for the C-suite?
I think both can definitely benefit from reading the report. When we're in these incident response engagements, we're really in the weeds and focused primarily just on the incident response process of that engagement. But the report allows us to take a step back and really get a holistic view across the entire quarter and identify strategic trends. So I think while it doesn't go into the weeds with like IOCs and stuff, I think both defenders as well as the C-suite could benefit from reading.
I can confirm that that's also my impression. And looking at the report, it has really great visual summaries of the information, which can be used by people of various backgrounds. Okay, well, now let's get to the main topic. What did we see happening in Q2 of 2023 in the cybersecurity field? What incidents were observed, and were there any big surprises maybe in the past months?
Sure. So in Q2 of this year, healthcare was once again the top targeted business vertical. So this is the second quarter in a row that we've seen this. The top observed threat in the second quarter was actually data theft extortion. And within this type of attack, attackers will gain access to environments, attempt to steal large amounts of data, and then they attempt to, or they threaten rather, to steal or sorry, to steal, to leak or sell the data. Sorry. So they steal the data, then they want a ransom demand or extortion demand for that data. And this is all done without ransomware, without data encryption. It's just straight data theft. And so this type of attack is not new. It's been around for a long time, but this large increase that we saw in the second quarter is a significant shift in the threat landscape. And this quarter also featured the Clop ransomware group. However, they were not deploying Clop ransomware. This was a data theft extortion attack. And if you've been following Clop for the last few years, you can probably guess how they gained initial access. This group has a long history of exploiting zero-day vulnerabilities, specifically in managed file transfer applications. This started with Kiteworks in 2021, formerly known as Excellion, the Forta Go Anywhere vulnerability earlier this year, which is what we identified in the Clop engagement that we saw. And more recently, they have been exploiting the Move It transfer vulnerability. And this is all without the deployment of ransomware. So definitely a significant shift that we should pay attention to moving forward. And the top identified initial access vector this quarter, or in the second quarter, was compromised credentials on valid accounts. And in a lot of these situations, multi-factor authentication was either not enabled or partially enabled. So a lot of these could have actually been prevented had multi-factor authentication been applied correctly.
I think the recommendation to apply MFA and to configure it properly has been on our top recommendations list for the past few quarters, so it shouldn't come as a big surprise to anyone. Very interesting developments. I would like to highlight one more point from the quarterly report. We observed quite a few cases of a specific commodity malware called Gootloader. It's not that new, it has been around for some time, but it doesn't have the same media attention as Quackbot, for example. So I think it would be useful for our viewers to find out a bit more about this type of commodity malware, what does it do, and how is it being used actually by attackers in the overall kill chain. Pavel, how was it for you? Did you have any incidents that involved the use of this malware?
Hey, unfortunately, yes, quite a few ones. So this is a drive-by compromise malware. This is how it gets to the machine. This is the initial vector. Luckily, we're able to observe the usage of this on the machines in the customer environments before any kind of impact was done. So the detection was not on malware itself, but it was done on the earlier stages when there was some kind of data leakage being tried, or there was another malware identified. There were malicious software to steal the credentials. Anything what has happened after the initial execution of this caused the detection, but malware itself, unfortunately, did not. Probably it's due to the fact that they changed this malware a lot. They obfuscate the code, they change it constantly. So it's not that easy to remain the detection capabilities for this. But the main way of executing this is very common for all of the years so far. So first thing, it starts with the searches over the internet for some kind of legal agreements or tax agreements for the specific regions. And then the person who is doing the search goes to the website which is compromised by the threat actor, and this malware is stored there. So this person downloads a zip file. It's located in the user downloads directory, so it's manual download for them. It's in most of the cases very the same pattern. Once it's downloaded, user opens the zip file, executes the JavaScript file which is inside, and then plenty of things are happening. We observed stuff what was in the JavaScript from PowerShell to Chash, download additional payload, but everything is actually very similar. So to enumerate the system further, get some persistence over scheduled task over PowerShell, and try to identify interesting data on the system and move laterally inside the environment. Usually on those stages, it was detected, so we're able to start the analysis to verify what they were able to do so far and stop the spread at this level.
So if I were to summarize, it looks as if one of the possible ways to prevent the working mechanisms of this type of malware is to be careful what we download from where, and be sure that we download from trusted resources, because that could at least minimize the chances of us downloading a poisoned file.
Oh, definitely. Whenever we're looking for the PDF file, executing the JavaScript is something what should bring our attention on with the other extensions as well. So definitely we should be careful on the stuff what we are downloading and executing later on.
Good advice. I would like now to go back to one of the points that Nicole mentioned when giving us the gist of the report. The point about the rather big change in the operations of some ransomware groups, the change from double extortion, meaning encryption of files, data exfiltration in combination. So as Nicole mentioned, some ransomware groups are moving away from this method to only doing the second part, the data exfiltration and requesting a payment, like a ransom for that. And this poses a question if you think about it, because why are ransomware groups, which have been successful in their business operations for quite some time, shifting away from something which has been profitable for them to a new method of work? So any ideas what could be the reason for this change?
I can try to answer that. I mean, we will never know for sure, but I have a couple of theories going around. One is there is still a lot of development from security vendors on how to detect ransomware and block it at early stages, usually by monitoring how often a process open files or write on disk in order to kill the process that is actually encrypting the disk. So it's making it harder and harder. But I think the main reason, at least from my understanding, is ransomware activities took a lot of heat on the past few months and years from different governments and law enforcement agencies, because they are disrupting an operation of a business. A business could be a company, it could be a critical infrastructure. So you are disrupting a lot of people, so governments don't like that. So they did a lot of activity try to chase those other adversary groups. There are a lot of agreements between different countries also in order to chase them. And I think the movement to data exfiltration instead of ransomware is because, well, basically the oil rig will still be working, the train will still be working, the hospital will still be working because nothing is encrypted. There's no disruption. It's just data exfiltration. It's just a matter of confidentiality of the information rather than disrupting a business or a service.
And just to caveat off of what he said, the development of ransomware, it takes a lot of time and resources, and just one simple mistake for the developers can lead to a free decryptor going out into the public. And that, again, they have to go back and make all these changes. So taking all that away, it takes out all of those barriers to entry as well for newer groups. And something else I wanted to point out, just looking back in the last 2 years, is we've seen a lot of trends as far as the ransomware racing for speediness, because they want to, encrypt as many systems as possible, as fast as possible, due to they want to evade detection. We actually started seeing partial encryption, and then even some data destruction. And there was a lot of concern in the industry as to where this was going to go next. And we don't know for sure yet if that's going to be, just straight data theft extortion, but it could be something, with this rise in activity in the second quarter.
I think I totally agree with both of you. And being based in Europe, we have a lot of regulations which are already in place or coming up in regards to user data being compromised. And even though it doesn't cause business operations disruptions, it does put enormous pressure on a company if they were to be reported to those agencies that they have violated those regulations. Well, this is definitely a trend that we can continue observing in the upcoming quarters. Right now, it is a significant change in the threats that we observe. So next quarter, we'll see whether this will continue also over the summer months. With this, I would like us to move to the next rubric of our broadcast, and that is a very special section in which one of our colleagues gets the mic and gets to share something that is close to his heart, a topic that he's passionate about. I already gave you a hint that the topic that we'll talk today is the one that definitely makes it to the security news every second Tuesday of the month, but it should be there more often. Yeah, no surprise, we're talking about patching. And I will now hand over to Sebastian to tell us a bit, why is patching still important? Are we still talking about this?
Thanks, Gergana. The short answer is yes, and I'm going to try to explain briefly why patching is really important, especially now, these few months, and hopefully not, but probably the next upcoming months as well. If you start looking at the trends we saw on this half year, we are seeing an increased number of incidents where exploitation was the initial back access vector to the customer environment. So basically, from our side, from Talos Incident Response, we work on more incidents that started to exploitation rather than phishing. And we know phishing used to be the #1 entry point into organizations. We don't know if this trend is going to sustain in the future, but we are seeing that increase. And we want to call out mostly a couple of things we observe in our incidents, kind of lessons learned, let's say. The first one is, when you think about patching, it's important to not forget about your network infrastructure. And I like to really remark that. Don't forget your network infrastructure. There was a threat advisory we released in conjunction with Cisco, the UK National Cybersecurity Center, the NSA, and the CISA in April this year, alerting about a campaign named Tooth campaign operated by the allegedly Russian state sponsor APT28, also known as a Fancy Bear. The importance of this campaign is they were targeting to exploit vulnerabilities on network equipment, mostly routers and switches. The funny part, or the weird part, if you want to say it, is those vulnerabilities, some of those were kind of old. And there was one that really caught my attention when I was looking at the data. They were exploiting a vulnerability on SNMP for a Cisco iOS device that was patched on 2017. So we are talking 6 years ago.
Wow.
That vulnerability was patched, but this group was still able to exploit it and set a foothold into the customer environment. The other thing we'd like to say is, we know that patching is a very stressing process. It's impossible to patch everything. There is no need you can patch everything. Just looking at the number of vulnerabilities we have per year, it's impossible. What is important for patching is understand and prioritize what needs to be patched before and what can wait a bit longer. So for example, there are several things that can take into consideration. I will mention just a couple, but I will say first is about the vulnerability you are dealing with. You need to understand what is the impact of that vulnerability and the type. It's not the same having information disclosure than having remote code execution. Then you need to understand the importance on the asset where that vulnerability is applicable, let's say. If the asset is internal, it's one thing. If the asset is public facing, it's different thing. Plus, understand the criticality of that asset. It's not the same a test environment on internal VLAN that only 2 persons access than your public website. The impact on the business is completely different, even if we talk about the same vulnerability. So all that information should be taken into consideration to prioritize and make sure that at least to fortify the important parts and build security layers in order to be protected as much as we can. And for those patches that can be applied, there are some additional protections that can be taken into consideration along kind of compensating controls. That is more or less the idea I had in mind.
Well, first, let me say that that was a very long patching cycle for the 6 years that took to patch that device. Your argument reminded me of something we talked about probably in the previous or one episode ago. It was about the importance of asset management, because before you can prioritize what you need to patch, you need to know what you actually have in your environment.
Exactly. Yeah. You need to have visibility on every asset in order to see, first understand the assets you have, and then see which vulnerabilities affect those. So definitely those two go together.
Yeah, that's the foundational work there.
I need to also step in here, unfortunately. I'm sorry. But in the last quarter, we observed also incidents which were involved, or rather which were created due to the old software inside the customer environment, or the software which was totally forgotten that it's still there. Like there were test servers which were accessible from the public, which were vulnerable to some stuff from years ago, but no one was totally aware of this, and this server was not monitored. There were old additional network devices which were like, again, public, and no one was actually monitoring those, because since it was working fine, nothing has happened to this, because any incident would cause like a damage or disruption in the service, but it was not the case. It was the case that the adversary was able to get the access and start the enumeration of the internal environment. So definitely please patch your environment and monitor those assets as well.
Pavel, your comment actually brings me to our next topic, the fact that, yes, technology plays a major role in securing our environment, but there is more to it. There are people and there are processes. And maybe the test environment that you just mentioned had been put into place by somebody who changed the role or left the company, and it has led to the test environment being totally forgotten, and without a proper process to do a revision and testing of the whole attack surface, this could remain open for attackers to exploit. And with this, I would actually like to come to the next topic, the service overview section of today's broadcast. We're going to talk about the Purple Team exercise. And the Purple Team exercise is a bit of a buzzword, if you ask me. Currently, it's being discussed everywhere, and there are different definitions of it. So I would love to hear from you. What is it? What does the Purple Team exercise do? And what it's not? And most importantly, third question, what value does it bring to an organization?
Okay, let me step in again. Let's start with the definition of the purple itself. So it's a color which comes from two another colors, from blue and red, of course.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what Purple Team is. It's a collaboration between red and blue teams, which can improve their own skill set and their own activities, what they are doing. So everything what red team is able to learn from the blue team, it's profit for them, because they will know the environment way better, and they will know how to evade the detection as well. And the same applies to the blue team. Whenever they are able to detect what the red team is doing, or what the red team did, but they were totally not aware, will improve their skill set in the other incidents or other activities they will be performing. So mainly, or the main reason for the purple team is a collaboration between those two teams, and this is the biggest value out of this. What Purple Team does? Purple Team emulates the threat actor, the activity or the actions which threat actor may take in the environment, and focus on the detection capabilities in the environment. And once the activity, the action is detected, what happens next? During our deliveries, we observed some time ago that malicious activities were detected, credentials harvesting was detected, but nothing has happened with this because it was all blocked in the environment. But the system on which it was blocked was not publicly accessible. So it means that threat actor somehow gained the access to the server and it was not blocked by any other stuff. So in those cases, Purple Team will allow us, in a collaboration with the security operations team of the customer, to verify if the detection was handled properly, if the detection was properly identified, and what has happened with this later on. So moving forward, the Purple Team which we deliver is actually some kind of cross collaboration across different teams, because our Purple Team is driven by the incident response team, and we, in the collaboration with our offensive team members, are creating the scenarios for the customer, customized for the environment, and then we are collaborating with customer security operations team to properly detect it, properly respond, properly analyze the whole situation. Moving forward with what is the key difference, since we've got a lot of team members who are working in the threat intelligence team, we can also create a scenario which is customized for specific threat actor or for the specific vertical of the customer. So we'll be emulating the adversary behavior, which is targeting this kind of environment only or specific for this kind of activities. And this is the main difference. This is the main benefit, because whenever later on there will be a situation that customer is being under attack or the SOC team sees something in the detection tools, they will be able to navigate to properly locate other logs, supporting ideas, supporting logs to properly defend the environment against the threat actor.
That is a very exhaustive explanation. Thank you, Pavel. I want to make sure that one point is that I got that one correct. A purple team differs from a pen testing exercise by the fact that we have blue team involved in the exercise. The blue team working side by side with the defenders of the organization, rather than the defenders being on their own, trying to prevent the pen testing or just observe what it does. Did I get this point correct?
That's exactly the case. So all of the offensive activities in the purple team are driven by the defensive part. So the main focus is on detection, on the analysis, and on the response. We provide the recommendations like all of the stuff what was totally missed, that improvement needs to be done in this matter. And later on, we also analyze everything with the security team of the customer to identify if there are any weaknesses in the process or detection of their understanding and recommending or navigating what to do next with this kind of artifacts or activities.
Great, great. Last question before we move to the Q&A for Pavel is, what type of organizations will benefit from a purple team exercise?
Oh, I believe every kind of organization, because Purple Team is a process for the defense improvement. So it doesn't need to be like a huge team of the defenders to participate in. It can be even one person, which will be working later on and knows the environment very well. So every kind of organization can leverage the Purple Team activity.
And then we can scale the purple team scope to the respective size of the organization.
Yes, definitely.
Cool. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you very much for giving us this overview. I would now take a look at the questions that we have from our viewers. Okay, so here's a good question. Do you think that the shift from double extortion ransomware to data theft extortion will have an impact on ransomware as a service providers, since the encryptors will no longer be necessary? It's a bit of a long question. I can repeat it if you want to. So is the shift to only data theft extortion going to disrupt the ransomware as a service model?
I can answer this one, or at least take a shot at it. So it's hard to say with the information that we have, because like I mentioned earlier, data theft extortion attacks, they've been going on for a long time. If you look at groups like Karakurt, I mean, they've been doing this for years. So it's hard to say if this shift that we're seeing is going to impact the ransomware as a service operators. I think only time will tell. I think when we get closer to the end of the year and we look at like a year in review, we can probably have a better answer. But at this point, looking at ransomware activity, I mean, in the second quarter, we saw a slight increase from the first quarter. It doesn't look like it's slowing down anytime soon.
Well, that gives us even more arguments to actually tune in next quarter for the next edition of the Talos IR On Air. I would like to thank you for joining us in this live broadcast. I'd like to thank our panelists for being my guests today, and kudos to the whole Talos team that is behind the production of this report and this live broadcast. We'll be live online again in October for the Q3 2023 Talos IR On Air. I hope that you join us then.